So I'm gonna start in 3, 2, 1. I have two main points. One, our movement will be less powerful, and people and the narratives all change to less powerful and not changing a lot way. And the second problem is now we don't have tools to change something, because at that time, at the devolution given time, as our closing team says, we might change something, but now we settle down, or narratives change, and we don't have enough tool to make this change happen. So these are the issues, and it is the reason why we forgot the independence moment. First of all, what we want? Yeah, we have parties, we have figures, and we want to be a separate country, as a nation, as a sovereign authority to everything, like trade and etc. But they give us some rights, you know. In our political system or in our daily life, they have lots of good affected policies because of the devolution we have. What are these? We have fundings in universities. We have low-cost healthcare. And these are very bad for our independence wanting. And let me start my arguments. First, our movements will be became less powerful. Our domestic political system are now full of English-sided politicians, and it started with like that. Why they started with like that? Our assemblies, our politicians, our public figures are now a lot of English-sided than our previous, like, Scottish independence movement ones. Why? Because they started with a political control. They built our some of the unions, some of the NGOs. They implement their NGOs, their view of the NGOs, their view of the unions to our political system. They created this at the first beginning. And these politicians, this mechanism is important, these politicians and the public figures change the view of independence narrative, because it is easy to promote people, economic related topics, or saying we done lots of good things to you, and before the devolution our country is very bad situation, we don't have lots of opportunity to universities, etc. It is easy to make people believe this kind of stuff. What I mean by that, it's easy to say in petroleum crisis, we as a Britain saved you with the economic policies we implemented. If you are an independence country, you couldn't save that petroleum crisis, or you couldn't save that in the 2006-8 crisis, and etc. And Britain, and it is very unknown to start a new economic policy for an independence country, and people are very scared of the financial risk of the independence or political risk of the independence, because their assembly will change, lots of things will be changed. They have to start and make new politicians, make new researchers, make new NGOs, and these are very opportunity costly things, and they seem it is a costly thing. I mean that average Scottish and Wales people, they see these costs, and the narrative make them see these costs. So people are okay with what they get. I mean, they have free universities, they have low-cost healthcare, which they have not before. So this, yeah, you can come.
On our side, Scotland has institutions, it has public servants, it has the infrastructure that it needs to be independent. On your side, they have none of that, so the fear is much larger on your side of the House of Independence.
My teammate will respond, but I mean that different way. I mean, now these issues and these political narrative will affect you, and it will be a bad thing. And that these costs make nowadays peoples scared of a change and scared of something, and they see their benefits, so it is easy to they remember kind of stuff. And what that makes, so opening government has two issues. They say they create a huge independence movement now, but I say the time, like the 20 years, we don't develop so much. We do not have sovereignty of our government and or stuff, etc. So we don't have power to change now. And secondly, the movement has became less and less powerful. And the second point of my argument, these benefits are getting lower and lower. At first, they give us something good, but what I mean by that, we now still stick with the UK-sided problems. And we, as a politician and as the narrative, they still make emphasize on our benefit. They still trying to make the UK's benefit and etc. because they know we cannot change and we don't have the power to do so. So I am explaining that we at first at the middle maybe, but as the time passes, we became less authoritarian, less have power to change something, and it makes our independence movement less and less important and less harmful. So the third problem, in the narrative, these public figures and etc., we believe that this movement is settling down every day. So what I mean by that? So first of all, the better place narrative is getting stronger and stronger, because as we face the important events like the COVID and this financial crisis, these narratives getting more popular and make it populist like narratives. So at these important times, we are not thinking about changing stuff and independence movement, because at the first independence movement has some tools to create so, but now we don't have a lot of public figures, we don't have a lot of people to support us, people to go to the street with us, go to the maybe change want to think. And in some of the academic institutions, they don't have published these kind of works because they know they cannot change because people are believing the England-sided views. They might say, but the political party is getting a little bit voting. But I say, this is the clash point of that. At the 20 years of time, we couldn't develop some tools and etc. And we get lots of harm because of that. Because whenever the times we can change something, these changing times passed and we still can't find a way to use that. And these are the arguments of mine. And the last one is a rebuttal for the OG stand. They say this independence movement will be powerful because of the, they say, it's over? Okay, thank you.
Very fine speech. I'd like to give the floor to the Deputy Prime Minister to continue sign today's debate. Here.
I'll begin my speech in 3, 2, 1, and go. OO tells us that Scottish people now are happy with the way things are, or at least somewhat satisfied, because they see that devolution has brought them some good things. Note panel, how does Scotland look right now? Scotland is one of the most underdeveloped areas of the UK. It has the highest levels of drugs and crime and poverty. It has the highest levels of child education. And I'll explain to you structurally why this is currently the case in a second, right? But right now, people are not happy in Scotland. Why is this? Because the interests of Scottish people are inherently different to the interests that people in the UK in general, and especially English people who have most of the political power in the UK right now, have. Why is this the case? Because Scotland is a very resource-rich country, and it has a lot of people that work in the service industry and in like factories and like mining, right? Scotland is where all the oil is. Scotland is where a lot of the natural resources that the UK has access to like be very rich come from. This is why the UK is so invested in stopping Scottish independence, because they want to have access to those resources and want this at all costs. What does this mean for people in Scotland, though? This means that in the interest of the UK to continue having Scotland be an area where a lot of people are working in like very blue-collar jobs, right? Like everyday day-to-day jobs, because this is something that actively benefits them. This means that there's a lot of people in this area that are laborers. And this is why the political opinions of people in Scotland differ so much from England, right? This is why we see in most polls at the moment that Scottish people are really, really pro-labor, but there's quite a few of them compared to the giant area that is the UK in general, and specifically England, which has a much, much higher portion of the population, right? What does this tangibly mean for this debate? It means that the most important issues for Scottish people, which end up being trade and international relations, are exactly the ones that they have no control over, right? So this means that the thing that's most important for Scottish people on the day-to-day, sure, like education is nice, sure, healthcare is nice, but note panel, these things are still not great at the moment. Why are they not great? Because the UK still has the most power in terms of funding, and the UK has the ability to veto things that the Scottish Parliament does, right? Like they're able to just say, that policy, we don't like it, and they've done it before. The Scottish Parliament recently wanted to pass a bill about trans inclusion. The UK government was like, no, fuck that, we don't want that, and immediately was like, you can't do it, right? The UK has the biggest power in terms of allocating funds, and they structurally underdevelop Scotland because it's in their interest to do so, and in their interest to have these blue-collar workers that are going to be subservient. How does this change how the debate looks? This means that currently in the status quo, people are more riled up than ever for independence. Now let me characterize to you what the movement before devolution looks like and what the movement after devolution looks like. Starting with the movement before devolution. Before devolution, you don't have any tangible alternative. So there's a lot of vocal people, there's a vocal minority that care a lot about this, but the everyday person probably does not care about it enough to make actual political change. Why is this the case? One, because people generally prefer the status quo because the other option is an unknown that they cannot account for. This is for all the reasons that OO themselves give you, right? People are extremely scared of what will happen when you become independent because they have no idea before devolution, they have zero idea what this looks like. Before devolution, you don't even have a Scottish parliament. It's literally like you're just a region of a normal-ass country, and you cannot imagine what that probably looks like, right? So that means that the everyday person probably has heard of the Scottish independence movement and might feel strongly about it because they feel like it's their identity, and we concede that. But at the end of the day, that's not enough to spur action. Because why would I give up the job that is actually still paying me some money and giving me some stability for the fears that come with being an entirely independent country? Fears like, what will our currency be? How are Scottish politicians even capable of running an independent country? Like, you don't know any of this. All of these factors are unknown to you, which means like in most countries where there's like independence movements that don't never ever succeed for exactly that reason, because the average person is not faced with this on their day-to-day life. The average person thinks, I need to get food on the table. Yeah, England sucks, but like I'm not going to join the riots, right? Like I don't want to be like fired from my job because I'm rioting. I don't want to do all of this. Yes, POI closing.
Okay, how does independence look like in your work? Do they revolt? Do they like...
Perfect. Let me talk about that. This debate is about strengthening the Scottish independence movement. So why is devolution the best thing? Because devolution has given us a tangible alternative, and this is what Alison says to you, but let me characterize what this looks like to the everyday person. This means I see a Scottish parliament exists after devolution, right? This means that there's a tangible political mechanism that is comparable to the one that countries have, meaning that I can actually see what political discourse happens. Note, Scottish parliament, before devolution, the conversation in Scotland, independence is a part of the political conversation and the things that people run on, but generally they're running to get elected in UK Parliament, right? They're running on big policies like, you know, like economics or whatever, right? Their politicians are running with the idea in mind that they're gonna be in Westminster and like talking to all people, right? What happens after devolution is that now people are running on independence, and independence becomes a key factor in UK politics, right? Because this is, note, the 1990s is when we even get the creation of the SNP. The creation of the SNP is in response to devolution, because now people are like, okay, we have devolution, but some people are like, it's not enough, and some people think it is enough. So we can see that at the start of the movement, probably there's some people that are going to be okay with devolution, right? Like at some point, like OO says, they're going to be like, oh yeah, this is enough power, blah, blah. But note, 25 years have gone by since then, and Scotland is fucking like horrible, right? Most people are not happy with the things because they've seen devolution. They've given the UK a chance now. They've said, okay, let's try it like this, and it has fucked them up. So that group of people that already thought it was fucked up are still campaigning for independence, and that other group that was like, maybe this is enough, are now convinced to actually rile up. Why does this make you more riled up than before? Because in contrast to before, now people have a tangible alternative that they can picture future. And this is the key thing, because the everyday worker, A, has now heard about independence and that being the main conversation. Like, note, ever since devolution, there are two parties in the Scottish Parliament, and it's pro-independence and unionist, right? This is where the main debate revolves around, and ideological issues are like coming towards the background, because this is the main discussion. At the point where you've spent 20 years with this discussion in mind, having seen a tangible alternative, you're much more likely to actually think, yes, we can do it. Yes, we can have our own policies, especially when you've seen the Scottish Parliament do policies that most people in Scotland want, but people in the UK don't want, right? And this is the narrative that these politicians are able to spin, meaning that much more people care much more deeply and are more willing to, A, more people join the movement as a whole. This strengthens the movement in the way that, like, sure, like, even if they don't care as deeply, you still have a much, much larger number of people that actually buy into this. And how does this change things? In 2011, there was literally a referendum about wanting to stay and wanting to, like, be independent. And that referendum was, oh, sorry, whatever. Maybe I should check timers.
The hand lifting thing doesn't mean you have to all stop the but in general, you're supposed to end by 7:15. Anyway, I'd like to give the floor to the Deputy Leader of Opposition to close the file.
Three, two, one. We're going to explain why, what are the mechanisms for a movement to succeed to its last goal. Second, which tools we have lost because of this situation. And third, even if we were going to win, we are going to win what we actually want to, full independence, why having this process gradual is worse than our alternative. But before that, some answers to OG. First of all, we do not claim that Scottish people do not feel like there are problems anymore. We acknowledge that they know, but the difference between there's a difference between being unsatisfied and being active participants of a movement, and we are going to claim that we have lost that chance to supporting Labour instead of having a radical pro-Scottish independent party which will cause bigger problems for UK. We will claim that what was going to happen in our alternative is a part of the problem. So claiming that they were Scottish people are already supporting Labour, they have not lost the soul, etc., isn't actually proving anything. And they claim that more people acknowledge the issue because media acknowledgement and etc. First of all, there is no result of that. More people acknowledge, but if we prove that more people cares less about that, so this will not result in our independence. Secondly, what they forget is that this is not given to us. This situation is not given to us. We already had strong unions. We already had a strong movement, so this would have to result intrinsically in more towards our goal. So what we already had, if we had gained this much of an independence from UK, that means that we already had very devoted people who were ready to risk everything they had. They had reasons to pursue a greater cause, etc. So we cannot succeed, we couldn't succeed to this point if we didn't have a lot of resources to organize a lot of people. So that what that means is that if we didn't make those people believe less in our narratives, believe less in our organization, etc., we could have went further. Why? What makes people believe more in our organization? I think if you're going to be an active participant in an organization, you should believe in greater changes. You wouldn't risk everything you have for small changes that is going to be come to your life in like longer times, etc. You would need to believe that radical changes would going to happen if you are expected to devote your life to it. Second, the narratives should be emotional to make you give up on everything you have. What I mean by that is that sometimes having full anger, believing that nothing have ever changed, believing that everybody has put their lives on the table and nothing have changed for a greater time, they have never gained anything. Sometimes that is the fuel that forces you to be more radical, to forces you to be on more protests, etc. But the more you feel like there are people who are gaining something, there are people who are giving you the parliament, etc., the less anger you feel, the less need you feel to give this narrative to further generations, etc. You kind of start to lose these emotional stories and greatest challenges that would make you pursue to go further. So why would we need this greater hate and growing anger, etc.? First of all, to be together, because when this happened, the Scottish movements split two parts that would support the status quo, believe that nothing further could be able to come, and the ones who would pursue further, which is not good for our movement and our emotional situation, etc. Being split to two is something bad in and of itself. Now, if this is our situation now, if this wouldn't be our situation, and if we could have protected everything we had, what would this result in? It would result in ongoing protests without compromise. It would result in radical ways which will block the system. It will result in more organized and powerful and crowded political power, which is even a better bargaining power. Now, why we don't have that now? Because resistances became less powerful when they have victory narratives get already written. What I mean by that, because they become focused on a sense of accomplishment rather than a sense of need and a sense of writing a better future. Because writing this narrative costs less to the movement itself, because they don't need to be that radical now. They don't need to oppose those on power that much, and this is just easier to say that we have gained, we are the powerful nation, we are not the ones who failed for centuries, etc.
Politicians before the revolution were getting voted into Westminster. How can they make the main political discussion going against Westminster and gain independence?
Because of the reasons I'm explaining now, because it is easier to focus on the accomplishment itself in and of itself. So when you focus, movements focuses on the accomplishment itself, it is less of a conversation. What should you do to go further, or even if it is possible to go further? Because having your own parliament, it gives you the illusion. You feel like the movement has compromised too much as a participant on the movement. You don't feel you had the power, you had you masses, you had the everything, but you have compromised on just having local government, etc. So you don't feel like, you don't know how it would go further. What else could you do? You feel like this is the end, so you lose your hope in the organization, in the movement itself, because you had everything you could have, and this is the last point you could have go. So this is what this proves. Now, because you don't believe in the movement itself, you don't have the narratives that would push you further. Now you're not an active participant that would go on protest. Now you're not an active participant that would risk your life, because that is what radical movements require.
Czy masz tam dwójkę? Bo mam jedynkę, trójkę. Nie jest. No dobra. A, widzę. Okay. I will. All ready? And am I audible or like? Great. Okay. I will start with my next word. If you give a group some rights, they chill down because they get busy using their newly granted freedoms to implement change instead of yelling at the crown with little to no effect. Dear panel, what does not change in this debate? Scotland is still not independent. Scotland's economy is still bounded by the crown, and independence strongest movement is still strong. In the status quo, the last independence vote was 45-55, so really, really close. What does change actually? Scotland has some control over education and healthcare. That is what the info slide gives us, and we get some tools to actually change things to implement the parliament. Our road to victory will be twofold. So first of all, we'll chill the independence movement by its fragmentization of the movement itself, and second of all, of putting the responsibility for how fucked Scotland is on Scotland themselves instead of UK who shackles them. And note that this will happen regardless if the devolution was good, if the devolution was bad. We are just talking about the responsibility. So what is the biggest problem of Scotland and how independence was like needed? Because we need some context of 98. We've got Margaret Thatcher meddling with Scotland. We've got deindustrialization in 1980s, impacting the economy, which like progressed into the biggest drug crisis on the islands. You've got London's central culture since the 1800s, which pushed education and culture of the Britain over all other cultures, which then leads to like Scots almost losing their language. That's why like Hosier singing in Scottish is such a big deal, right? At the same time, the identity got really tokenized by the UK. You know, Celts and Highlanders and Goths, right? They want to separate. This is a tipping point, and if they don't get something, they will just go Ireland Road and go IRA. That is already what is happening and what the context is. Yes? I think people still don't radical change. If they get pushed hard enough, it still can happen, right? So how did devolution, and because people don't like radical change, they will opt into the more easy ways. So how did evolution affect those problems? Because OG says more problems, more people are aware of the problems, their needs are different, they are getting fucked over. O says we don't have tools to change, make people believe that we need UK. But I think it's kind of the opposite, because it's so bad and because they've got the power actually. But first, let's move the fragmentization. Leader of independence now go their own ways. Before they were banned by one goal, just independence. They didn't think about what happens next because they had to put the movement in, put all the eggs in one basket and push the independence first. But they also have other incentives, and beside of independence, disagree on a lot of topics. You got liberals and laborers, and now they have a platform to present their ideas. So incentive to do it over pursuing independence. We agree with OG. You want independence, but you want it for a reason, not a principle. The reason is I want to maximize the impact I have on the country I love and make it as best as possible and not just make it the most free as possible. This is sadly not an American motion. You got an incentive, and devolution gives you the capacity to actually impact the country that you love. You can meaningfully impact how policies look like. Conservatives pushed Scottish language education, which like fixed one of the issues. Labourers pushed affordable healthcare that did something else, right? What is actually important? Why is that important? Independence lost a lot of traction. People got involved in different parties. People who work together are not now on separate sides of the parliament and have to clash their ideas with each other. What is the impact of this? There is no high impact faces to follow anymore because those high-ranking individuals are now the face of Labour, are now the face of like liberals, etc., because in those parties they can actually push policies with the limited amount of liberty they they have, but they still can push meaningful change instead just yelling at the crown that we want more. And they want to do that, first of all, because as a politician, I think this is what your job is and what you want to do in your life. Second thing, I think they are bound by their voters to actually, you know, push change that will impact the also short term and not like idealistic Scottish independence like 20, I don't know, 50 or whatever. Yes, POI.
People lose faith in a movement if the movement does not achieve anything. Why do people still have faith in Scottish independence on your side?
I think they still have some Scottish, they still have some faith. The faith is just not, it doesn't look the same. Like, look, your own side said that it was almost a 50-50 split, and we still say that it's just not as strong in the ways you think it is. So, like, all the teams say, oh, but we have so many problems in Scotland. And what happens? Guess who people blame now? They don't blame the only person in control like it was before. So the crown, and the direct response to the crown is getting independence from it, and now they can put blame on people who are more proximate to their problems and can affect their lives more directly. So their own parliament, their own parties, people that are actually like on the ground and that they vote. Because, fun fact, they actually get 2 votes, not they get 1 vote locally in the Scottish Parliament, they got a 2nd vote for the UK government, so they can still push that change locally and do. And what is the impact of this? People are more upset with their own parliament instead of being upset at not having independence, because not having independence is much less tangible to them than, you know, drug problem that they see on daily lives and parties doing or not doing something about it. So what they hate on and what they push for is probably the other party that can solve the problems in their daily life better, and not, you know, the crown shackling them from the fucking skies or something. Sorry. On alternative, they would support separation because they would see the crown as fully responsible for everything that's so fucked about their country. And what actually pushes that even more is when you have... I will take a breath. When you have your own parliament, you can actually see them doing some things, so you believe that they can actually fix those issues, regardless of like the crown shackling them actually or just in your head. Why is this important then? This proves how people are more likely to be involved inside of the parliament. When you're angry, you get to vote. And now to the culture. So what is important in the debate? Because people are torn. They see some of the benefits of being in the UK, having strong IR, strong currency, but they also see themselves as Scots. They love their country and have strong identity. Why is culture one of the most important things for those people? First of all, it's a base for their whole life. Like they're growing up, their traditions, their families, etc. Something that they cannot lose, because if you lose that, you just become an... Okay. Thank you for that speech.
Okay, is everyone ready? Great, so I will start in 3, 2, 1. Firstly, I think we need to establish how do we actually measure a strength of a movement, because we had some concepts along the way, and we believe that amount of people in the SNP, from the SNP in the main parliament, is a very bad way, very bad criteria to measure it. Why? Because I will explain it actually later. We believe the best measure to measure how to measure strength of a movement is to say how much people are willing to actively give their own capital to fight for that movement, and that's on how I will measure it with other teams. So starting with CG, because they try to tell us why that we will have a stronger movement because we will have more SNP representatives in the main government. First of all, people do not vote for SNP not because they don't agree with the independence. They don't vote for SNP because the SNP is extremely conservative, and they have been trying to push that very conservative agenda very recently. If it's not, it's very spec knowledge, so sorry. But it's actually quite conservative, have been repeatedly anti-immigrant in Scottish, trying to steal jobs, etc. Second of all, they're actually their program is quite limited because they're a respectively small party. They do not offer as many changes as other major parties within the UK offer. Third of all, they are extremely criticized by everyone else. Kind of every other party in the UK hates them, so they are under constant critique, and that critique also gets to Scottish people as well. Fourthly, they're quite elitist. You don't have as much blue-collar representation as it should be provided for a Scottish party, for a region that has so many blue-collar workers. So therefore, even if, for some reason, now people have a slightly more time or slightly more space to vote for Scotland, they would never vote for the SNP because of those following reasons. As you have characterized yourself, Scotland is slightly more left-wing than probably the major government. They consistently vote Labour. They consistently vote for staying in the EU. Therefore, they would never vote for the SNP. So if this is the criteria that you are setting on this debate to measure the strength of a movement, you are unable to win on this criterion because people will and have not voted for the SNP. And we can see that by the fact that the amount of SNP representatives in the major government has been consistently going down years and years and years, and it has never gone up. So just on a reality check, that impact has not happened if that is your criterion. But now measuring on other things. So also CG said in rebuttal to us that those regional parties will be better at ruling Scotland. First of all, they never had that amount of power in the first place ever. They always been just the opposition. That means that we are unable to prove that they will be actually efficient at ruling anything if they have never actually ruled. So there is a strong possibility that those people just given now so much amount of power will fuck things up because they have never done this before. Second of all, they are already deeply divided within themselves. Scottish people are not a monolith within what they want to happen in Scotland. So therefore, this is also a very strong case that they will be likely, most of them will be likely very unhappy with what is happening because they are very divided. That means that even within the Scottish government currently, people are not extremely happy with what the current Scottish Parliament is doing because they are again divided. Okay.
Without Scottish Parliament, voters need to trade off between ideology and pro-con independence. With Scottish Parliament elections separately, people can vote for Scottish independence and national interests separately, meaning more cohesion.
So they can vote. I have no idea what that point was, but I will move on to now rebutting OG. So first thing OG and also CG is kind of saying, and most importantly, is that people have more motivation when they see tangible change. People have less motivation when they see tangible change. 3 reasons why. First of all, they feel that someone else is already doing it for them. So there's no need for them to actually rush up, give out money, go to protest because someone else is already doing it. Second of all, if it's going there, those changes are happening, my help is not needed. So therefore, on the second part, people don't think that if they see tangible change, that means that their help, their capital, them giving something is simply not needed because it's happening without them. Third of all, if the movement is doing great, if the movement is having that success of having a full parliament established, no need for my help further is needed. That means, and a great example of that is that the biggest protests in numbers has always been in the countries where it is the hardest to change something. It was the biggest protests in the world were in Poland in '89, where we had a authoritarian government, it was extremely hard to change anything. The biggest protest recently happened in India, where the country is so big that it is extremely hard to change anything. Changes and people go to protests when they feel like they have nothing to lose because the movement needs them to change something. That means that if on their side they are achieving that success and they have this narration of success and tangible change, people lose the need to do something because they feel like they now don't need to do anything because change is already happening. So measuring just on the amount of people who are willing to go to protests, on our side, on the side where we have that parliament, people see tangible change and therefore see no absolute need to go to protests. So therefore, on our side, people are less likely to go, and we are fulfilling that measurement of how many people are willing to go for a protest. And just measuring with OO. I think OO, first of all, is largely dependent on how the devolution went. If it went good, if it went bad. Our case is fully working, no matter how we are able to, no matter how we say if devolution was good or bad. Second of all, we believe that OO have missed on telling us why those specific elements, like education and healthcare, are absolutely enough to make those people less angry and have less needs. First of all, Igor is fulfilling that by telling you why culture is super important by the end of their speech, which means that we are able to achieve that tipping point. But secondly, and most importantly, our case is not tangible on whether this is very important or very not important. Of course, this is tangible on the human psychology of how people operate when we give them that parliament, which has happened. So based on that, our case is, we are able to make that case way more exclusive to how the devolution actually happened and how Scots feel about those problems, whereas OO is fully dependent on proving to us why culture is super important and now people are willing, or education is so important that people are now willing to abandon this need. So just on measuring how much people, again, are willing to go to protest, which we think three teams agreed is the most important criterion, that therefore should be counted as the most important criterion, we are able to prove to you that on our side people exclusively lose any motivation to go to those protests because first of all they do not see the need, second of all they, as Igor explained, are now mostly focused on something that is super proximate to them, which is the relevant problem that they can actually very easily change by just voting. So therefore on our side we have less people going to protest for free Scotland, and therefore the movement is way weaker. Thank you.